Okay, it's 3:02. We have got a good crowd here. Thanks everybody for joining a interagency SFRF team meeting. I'm Lee Lilly with the governor's office, got our intrepid NCPRO team here, and we're going to go through some of the issues that we're working through with everybody. Stephanie's going to talk a little bit more about our SFRF information needs. We are in budget development mode here in the governor's office and with OSBM. And the more we know about where you are on your SFRF projects, the more effective I think we can be in trying to help the General Assembly think about their short session budget, which they'll be doing between April and July. And then we've got some US Treasury Reporting updates and then a Deloitte update from Tommy. And of course, we always have office hours at the end here. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out. We don't always talk about this, but when we do, I think it's really important. And I think it's even more important as we go through the rest of the year. The stories that our teams get to tell about the projects that we do are important because they help to drive home that these are really difference-making dollars and projects, not only in the recovery from COVID-19, but in the long-term success and prosperity of our state and our communities. So I just want to shout out Jessie Holmes and her team and the rest of you who work with Jessie on putting those stories together. You can always find them on the NCPRO website. And if you've got great stories to tell from your agencies, please make sure you're sharing them with us. We'd love to promote them with you and with your comms teams, because it's a really good way for us not just to tell our story to the broader world. Sometimes is the best way for us to tell our story within our own agencies, because people don't always know what we're up to. So it's a great thing to do, and I'm appreciative of that team. So no more filibustering from me. Stephanie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lee, and I echo those thanks. Jessie's done some amazing work with your help, and it's great, and we love to tell the stories, and we want that to continue. And it'll be relevant as we get into the next part of our agenda. So, Jamila, if you want to go ahead and share the slides, and we can go ahead and skip on down to slide number 4. That's just the agenda. You've seen that in the meeting invite. But we do want to talk with you about the reporting that we do for the General Assembly and the information that we need from you. So we submit quarterly reports to the Senate-based Budget and House Appropriations Committees and Fiscal Research. That was included in the session law that appropriated the SFRF. So we are required to. Was that a question?
Thank you.
So we are required to report to them each quarter on the funds that have been dispersed from NCPRO to each agency, the funds that are remaining, the SFRF that remains for each agency, and then lastly, how the funds are used by each agency. As you know, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, we're working on KPIs to address that third question, and we'll need to provide some additional information beyond what we've provided so far. So in addition to this information, Fiscal Research asked us for more detailed information on how each agency is meeting obligations and on what SFRF may be at risk for not being spent before the end of the 2026 deadline. So they would also like to see some additional information on how your funds are being used. So we are using the KPIs, we are using the stories, and we are going to ask you for some interim help on that as well. Next slide, please. So first, talking about obligation, please remember, and I'm sure you know because we say this all the time, all the SFRF must be obligated by December 31st, 2024. And that does occur at the agency level when an order is placed for property and services, or you enter into a contract, subaward, or similar transactions that require payment. We have some good news from Treasury, and that is highlighted here in green, is that they are releasing slowly but surely some FAQs that respond to the questions that we and many other states have asked since their interim final rule and obligation was released. And so they are going to allow us to obligate our planned agency expenses for personnel and administration. So that is great news. We don't need to worry anymore about our ability to obligate those funds that either you're using for administration or in a couple cases, you're just using for regular government agency work that is going to be completed. So that's been true if you have revenue replacement and even if you do not have revenue replacement. So we are glad that FAQ came out since our last meeting. And so we're glad that, that's been clarified. We do still have some information that we are going to have to provide to Treasury in the April 30th report, but the description is very vague and not clear. And so look for us to send you some guidance once we know what we all have to report. So that's where we're still waiting on that. We're also still waiting on their final obligation guidance. We still have some questions. We're still looking for more flexibility, but right now we don't know what that's going to look like. And next slide, please. So as you know, one of the other things that Fiscal Research wants to know from us is whether or not we're going to be able to meet the expenditure deadline of December 31st, 2026 with these SFRF dollars. Again, right now, under the current guidance, once we obligate the funds, we have to keep them and they're locked in into that subrecipient or contract based on what we report by the end of this current calendar year. So anything that's not spent will have to be returned to Treasury, and this is the legislature's last chance to reappropriate it if we think there are SFRF dollars that are at risk of not being expended by the end of 2026. So that's what we're working on right now. We really appreciate all of your help. Next slide, please, so that we can continue to pull that information together and give it to Fiscal Research. So we've talked about this, I think, the last two state interagency meetings, but we have been meeting, or the grants managers have been meeting with every agency. We're looking at on a project by project level, and we're looking at it at the subrecipient and subaward level to make sure that you have shared with us your detailed plans for projects. We know what your projections of expenditures are. We know if you have any funds that you're not going to use and you can send those back. We know if there are any funds you're worried about your subrecipients or your agency being able to spend, that we can identify those at risk. We know that there are a couple of agencies that need to have legislative changes made, and so we're working on that as well. We really appreciate your willingness to work with us, to let us know. The deadline is tomorrow. And we've also appreciated the fact that we are going to have a little bit of money left over. And you've let us know where you could use additional SFRF and that you could obligate and spend that within the time periods that are required by Treasury. So we are going to be sharing all the information with OSBM Maine, and that will be included in the governor's budget. Right now, I will say our requests for funds exceed what we think we'll have left, but we're continuing to work through that list, and we'll let you know as part of, or OSBM Maine will let you know as part of that budget development process. So we are going to report the at-risk funds to OSBM, and then separately, we do have to report as well to Fiscal Research. Next slide, please. So the other information that Fiscal Research needs from us is more detail on how you've been using the funds. And again, that's coming directly around the appropriations process. We have KPIs for a number of state agencies. We do not have KPIs for all of them. Fiscal Research is happy with the idea that we will have a dashboard in place with KPIs that's going to launch in April of 2024. It will provide information on an ongoing basis. As you know from developing the KPIs with us, some of that will be monthly, some of that will be quarterly, some of that data is collected only on an annual basis. So that's going to be where we put the bulk of that performance information. But in the meantime, if you recall on your monthly expense reports that you fill out, there is question number 3. And so in question number 3, we would like for you for this month to complete this question as follows. And you should have gotten this information from your grants manager, but if you have not, or if you've missed it, here is a brief description of what we would like for you to do. To give us a brief list of your project activities for the previous month and a description of your overall project status. Right now, people use question 3 in the expense report in different ways. Sometimes folks use it to talk about sort of what you've done this month. Sometimes they use it as just sort of a, hey, we dispersed funds. But I think what fiscal research is looking for is much more descriptive in nature. And so we want to be able to provide them with a little more detail and some metrics on how your project funds have been used to date. And then just generally, we're going to, again, launch the KPI dashboard at the end of April. So if you have not completed your KPIs and you do not get them completed by the end of April, you will not have data in that dashboard. So I want to make that, we're going to have to launch it with or without everyone on board. So I just want to give you as much notice and as much time to get your information to us as soon as you can. And we invite any questions about this and what we're kind of looking for here. Just so you know, this is what we're using it for, and why we're asking you to provide us more detail in this monthly expense report than you have necessarily had to do in the past. Okay, next slide. Oh, good. We have a question. Go ahead, Greer.
Hey, Stephanie. I think in Pangram, I think that question 3 still looks the same as it did before. And I remember before there used to be a 100-word limit. So should we just go ahead and put in exactly what you're asking for here, even though Pangram looks the same?
Yes, please put it in there, even though Pangram looks the same. And unfortunately, there is still a 100-word limit. We are working with DOT to change that field in Pangram and to give us some more flexibility. Unfortunately, it's going to take them longer to make the change than we have time to give the data to fiscal research. So we're going to use it. Whatever you put in that field, we can pull. And thank you for bringing that up, because the other thing is, for those of you who already have projects that are closed and you don't submit your monthly expense reports anymore, NCPRO will work on pulling data for you so that we have something more to report to fiscal research for the closed projects.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Stephanie. I had one other question as well. I think
sure.
I know what the answer is. So based on what you were saying about the administrative obligations, should we just continue to report them as expenses like we've always been doing for the time being until we receive more guidance from you?
Yes, you should.
Thank you.
We know, thanks, Greer. That's a great question. We know we're going to have to report something else to Treasury, but until Treasury makes up their mind completely and we know what it looks like, I think it would be not worth the effort that we would all put into it to try to guess what they want. Usually their portal is fairly conscriptive, and so we need to we need to decide what it is that that they want from us, so then we can then tell you how to provide the data. So thank you those are great questions, Greer. Daryl, go ahead.
Yeah, you say launch in April 2024. Is that then meaning it'll launch in early April, such that we would be putting this sort of referencing of KPI data relative to the report that we submit in April, which would in essence be covering, I guess, everything previous to that, or at least in the previous quarter?
No, we're going to launch KPIs closer to the end of April, just because I think it's going to be tough to try to aggregate the KPIs across all sorts of projects to put it into a dashboard. That's really the challenge right now. Mm-hmm. So I would think it's going to be more like late April. And for this expense report and for probably the next one, but we'll let you know for sure. For the one that's due here in a week, a few days, we would just want this kind of more detailed description of your activities. Does that answer your question, Daryl?
Yeah, but when you say description of our activities, keep in mind, okay, so we have beneficiaries, science museums in essence, who are spending this money on a wide variety of things relative to how we would report what they are spending it on, let alone providing some kind of language or metric. Trying to get a handle on what you fathom that would be.
I would, I'm trying to remember how many beneficiaries you have. So I would just,
55.
okay, so I would say, we provided, funds to 55 beneficiaries and then describe science museums and, there are
Mhm,
others.
mhm. Yeah,
Um, and they use the funds for a number of educational activities, including, and then just give like 2 examples.
okay. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Fiscal research's description that they gave us was unrealistic in my opinion. And
Mm,
so we're going to give them what we can give them reasonably while also not providing what we're already working to provide, which is key performance indicators.
okay.
Their
All right.
description was more like, we hired 2 people in this month and we did this with these 2 people. And we're like, no, you've never asked us to report on people and hiring and things like that. So we're
Mhm,
going to provide a much more basic description of funds. And they also weren't fully committed. It was hard to tell in the examples that they gave us what they really, really wanted. So I think we start with, a more of a we gave money to 55 beneficiaries that were science museums and other institutions, and they use these for educational activities, including, and then give 2
mhm.
examples, and you can be done.
Thank you.
No problem. And here in the meeting chat, young Jen has provided some more information. You can put more than 100 words in question 3 now. And then this is what the question 3 description is going to look like. And he gave a sample response. Again, I think it's okay if you don't put your hiring information in there. And I think it's going to depend on your project as to how much detail you can put in there. It's really going to depend. So we are happy to answer questions about your specific projects. If you want to talk to your grants manager, also our reporting team will be happy to help you with that. Again, this one kind of caught us a little bit off guard because we've been submitting these reports on a quarterly basis to the legislature since 2022, and this is the first time they've asked us for more information. So this is what we're doing in the interim until we get our KPIs launched. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the things we wanted to review is our Treasury reporting, because we do have a major report that's due April 30th. We do use the information that you provide us on a regular basis in Pangram, as well as the reporting templates that you fill out. And I also want to review with you, because we had gotten a couple of questions from agencies recently about what these reports are. So just a brief refresher on that. We are required to submit quarterly reports to Treasury. These reports are used to make sure that we're complying with all the federal rules and regulations. So we do aggregate that data from those expense reports, from the other attachments that you submit in terms of reporting. And then we submit this data into US Treasury's portal based on their rules. If we have any errors in our data, it kicks out our entire report. So as a state, we are dependent upon reporting on our $5.4 billion on the accuracy of everybody's data, which is why it's so important that the data is accurate. And we have a team of folks that work with your grants managers to make sure that the data is accurate, that we can submit it, and that it all adds up. And Treasury has this very somewhat complicated portal that has different parts of it that are all linked together. Next slide, please. So just to reiterate why it's so important, this was evidenced in our CRF desk review, which I know you heard from our state partners and other state agencies on how that worked. But basically, Treasury uses the report as the basis of all their auditing activities. So they're going to start with what we submit every quarter, and then they're going to ask us questions about it. And the questions range from everything, including, is it an eligible use? Did we assign the right US Treasury project category? Do we have the correct subrecipient information in there? Are their UEIs correct? Are their addresses correct? Is the contractor information in there correct? And then for each quarter, for each project, we have to identify the obligations, and we also have to identify the expenditures. So that when we went through the CRF desk review, we got asked questions based on our obligations and based on our expenditures and how it changed over time. And that's when we got asked to provide transactional level detail for all $3.6 billion. So while we hope we won't face that again with SFRF, it's quite a possibility. And then lastly, Treasury also resends this reported information to a Congressional Oversight Committee, and they'll use that information to determine if we have to repay SFRF dollars. So already you can see on the last screen in the portal that we submit, and it has multiple screens, that we'll be able to see in there what we have unobligated, and we know that in January of 2025, whatever our unobligated balance is what we'll have to pay back to the Treasury in January 2025. So that's the reason that we're constantly talking about reporting. It's not just something that we have to do that nobody ever looks at. It's actually a compliance tool from the federal government. So we have to make sure we're following it. John Williams gave us a good example the other day. Yes, it is a report. It's very similar to filing your taxes. It is a report that is used and has repercussions if you don't file the information correctly. So I just wanted to reiterate that for everybody, and it'll help understand and remind us of why it's so important to have accurate data. All right. Well, that is all for this part of the meeting, and Tommy is going to share with us about Deloitte and how the monitoring is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, since the last meeting a couple of weeks ago, Deloitte's been very busy, eagerly scheduling and holding meetings with the state agencies. If you haven't already met Joe Gorsuch and Matthew Isidoro, you soon will. Their goal in these meetings is to meet with the project staff, discuss the projects, and ask questions about the document request list that you should have already gotten. This will be, they're going to use all that information to do an annual risk assessment. They'll use that risk assessment to formulate an expanded monitoring plan. And for all of our active projects, if you have projects that are already completed, they're not asking any questions about those, and they won't be monitoring those, just the active projects. So that's what Deloitte has been doing for the last 2 weeks. I know that we've had a lot of meetings. If you've had a meeting with Deloitte in it, then that means that it's been a risk assessment / monitoring meeting. If you've had a meeting without Deloitte in it with us, then it's probably been an obligation expense meeting. So we appreciate all the time you've put in with meeting with us these last 2 to 3 weeks, and all the work that you've put into helping us answer questions that have been asked of us. But that's what Deloitte has been up to in the last couple of weeks. And if you have any questions of me, by all means, ask.
Thank you, Tommy. And we appreciate your willingness to work with Deloitte. I know we're asking for a lot right now, as there's a lot going on with budget development and reporting and monitoring. So we appreciate your patience and your willingness to work through the many requests that we have for you and that Fiscal Research and others have for you. So that is the end of our formal agenda. We're happy to stay on and answer additional questions and or address specific office hour topics. So thank you for your time. We're here. If you have questions, please ask. Tara, did you want to ask a question?
No, I'm not sure why my hand is up.
Teams. Teams loves us.
Yeah, okay. I think I got it down.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time. And if you have questions, you want to stay for office hours, let us know. And otherwise, please send any questions you have to your grants manager. Thank you again. Hey, Jonathan, did you have a question for us? Okay. All
I'm
right.
just hanging out.
All right, cool. We'll hang out with you if you need us. Otherwise, we were gonna